Good morning and welcome to Georgetown University and the McDonough School of Business. My name is Patricia Grant. I'm the Senior Assistant Dean in the undergraduate program here in the Business School. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here this morning. And by your appearance this early on a very cold day, I have to take it that you're excited to be here. Are you excited? Good. I'm very excited because from start to finish, we have an amazing program that we hope will spark an engaging dialogue. And as you look to the screens, you can see that it's time for us to start a dialogue. So if you haven't started tweeting yet, please tweet with the hashtag GUDiv, because we want to hear what you're saying and what you're adding to the conversation. And that conversation is not just a Georgetown conversation. It's not just a Catholic conversation. And if you're here from Catholic, can I see you? Okay, Catholics here. It's not just a George Washington University conversation. I know you're here. It's not just a Howard conversation. Howard? Okay, very good. I think I've heard Howard be louder before, but I'm not going to comment. It's not a George Mason conversation. Okay, they're coming later. It's not a University of Maryland College Park conversation. Very good. We thank you for coming this long way. It's a dialogue, and it's a dialogue for all of us to have. And so today, we want you to listen. We want you to ask questions. And we want you to define the dialogue, because you will be defining the dialogue for this country and for this world going forward as it relates to diversity and inclusion. And so that's why we're here today. And as we get started, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Norianne Sharp, who's the Senior Associate Dean and Director of Undergraduate Programs here in the McDonough School of Business. And when she heard about this conference and looked over the proposal, she did not hesitate. Even though we are a very busy office, she did not hesitate to say, we have to do this, we must do this, I'm behind you and Gamble. And so we're pleased to welcome her as someone who throughout her career has championed the cause of diversity and inclusion, both in her professional life and in her private life through nonprofit service. And so I'd like to welcome Dean Norianne Sharp to offer some words of welcome to you today. Please welcome her.
Thank you, Dean Grant. Well, as the undergraduate dean, I would like to formally welcome you to the McDonough School of Business on behalf of my entire team, because as you know, in today's world, individually, we cannot accomplish nearly as much as we can when we put our ideas and minds and efforts and enthusiasm together and truly collaborate and work as a team. So standing here and looking at you as Dean Grant said this early in the morning, I really am impressed because I know the pattern of students. I live 3 blocks from here, so I know what goes on Thursday nights and how late students sleep Friday morning, and this really is impressive. I know I'm really filled with anticipation because having seen the agenda for the day, I know that you're going to be inspired and perhaps participate in some life-changing discussions today. So I truly am excited for you. So because it does take a team to create, develop, plan, implement, execute any idea that comes along, and since in our office we encourage innovation, experimentation, and entrepreneurship, I am enormously proud, although not surprised, because I always say I have the best team on campus, but I am enormously proud and impressed at the astounding collaboration and hard work that took place to produce this exciting dialogue on diversity today. So I'm indebted to the leadership of Senior Assistant Dean Grant, along with the team in our office, and in particularly Associate Director Deborah Coburn, who is standing at the back, and Associate Director Steve Mobley. Steve, where are you? He's also standing at the back. So I hope that you will, throughout the day, thank them and acknowledge their hard work and leadership. Also, I'm appreciative of the constant inspiration and innovation of the students who are part of Gamble. Where are you? this morning? Any Campbell students? They're probably all working behind the scenes. They did a lot. They were part of the planning team for this event, and they've worked extremely hard on getting this day together for you and also promoting the event and really getting the word out. So thank you to all of you, and thank you for being here. On that note, it's my pleasure to introduce Dean David Thomas, who is Dean of Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business. He's a recognized thought leader in organizational behavior and strategic human resource management. Dean Thomas's research focuses on executive development, cultural diversity in organizations, leadership, and organizational change. Prior to his appointment at Georgetown University, Dean Thomas was a full professor of business administration at Harvard Business School, where he directed the school's organizational behavioral unit. David has brought with him a passion and vision for excellence in teaching, scholarship, and service to business and society, to Georgetown, and we are enormously grateful for his dedication to making the McDonough School of Business a world-class institution. Please join me in welcoming Dean David Thomas.
Thank you, Norianne. How's everybody doing? Good, great. Well, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to, first of all, welcome you here to the McDonough School of Business and to this event, which I think promises to be a very engaging and exciting time for you. And I'm especially delighted to have those of you here who are from our sister schools around the region. So I, in particular, I hope you have a great time here and become motivated to come back. For those of you who are undergraduates, someday you'll graduate from undergraduate. We hope you'll consider an MBA, and this is the place to be. Okay? I was given some marching orders for my comments this morning. And that is to try and put in context the diversity dialogue now that we are 60 years past the Brown versus Board of Education decision that desegregated schools in the United States. And also to speak to the question of whether or not and why and how we should be engaged or concerned about diversity at this point in the 21st century. Now, I have 3 children, the youngest of whom is applying to college as we speak, and the oldest of whom has been out of college for a few years. And one thing I've learned is that there's always a danger when I try to tell people who are in that age range what they should be thinking. Okay? So what I want to do is just offer some perspective very briefly, and then open up in the time that might remain for you to ask me questions that you think my reflections on them might be helpful in terms of stimulating the dialogue that will happen over the course of the day. So first, let me start by putting myself in some context. For those of you who may not already have noticed, I am a black man. I was born in 1956. That was 9 years after Jackie Robinson integrated baseball. 2 years after the Brown versus Board of Education decision. 3 years after Georgetown admitted its first black undergraduate student. And I was born to working class parents, neither of whom had finished high school at the time that I was born. It was probably seen as an improbable event that today I would stand here before you in 1956. I watched as a child as the civil rights movement unfolded. In many ways, it was a struggle to secure physical rights and freedoms. But if I think about my own life, in a more profound way, it was a struggle for minds and hearts. It was a struggle of hope against fear, and a struggle for the right to dream. And just to show you how, in that period that I was growing up, that struggle for dreams unfolded personally. I remember as if it was yesterday when I was about 5 years old. I went to my father and I told him I was going to be president of the United States. I also remember vividly, not long after that, going to my father and saying, I'm going to be the first black president. Because somehow, as a little kid, you know, you go to school and you watch the pictures that are up on the wall, you don't see yourself. And not long after that, I went to my father and I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. Because by the time I was 10, I realized that a young black boy could not dream to be president. So the next best thing was to be a lawyer. So it was a struggle for the right to dream. And you fast forward today, and what do you see? You see a black man who's dean of the McDonough School of Business, a white woman who's dean of our School of Foreign Service, an Asian man is dean of the School of Nursing here, a Latino is president of George Mason. 2 miles down the road, a man sits in public housing called the White House, a black man. I think when I grew up, there was nothing special about a black man being in public housing. Nobody thought that he would be in that public house. And his name is Barack Hussein Obama. So some people would argue that diversity has now taken care of itself. We live in a post-racial, post-gender, post society. Should we be concerned about diversity? Well, some would argue that we should, because inequities still exist, and those inequities correspond with group memberships. So while we all may have the right to do the same things, our access to those things may not be the same, and we need to attend to that. But I think it's important that we not get stuck simply in a mindset that's only about discrimination and fairness. That was the mindset that in some ways brought us to where we are, so that we can have people like me, a president who looks like Barack. But I think more important in today's world, the reason for organizations and us as individuals to be focused around diversity is because it's diversity that allows us to bring to our organizations and to our institutions the differences in perspective that can allow us to be innovative and creative. And that's what's important in today's world. And that bears a particular requirement, and that is that the leaders of organizations and institutions are not just committed to having their organizations look diverse, but are committed to creating the kind of organizations that allow that diversity to be experienced and positively used to innovate and change and develop those organizations and the individuals in those organizations. So we need to be asking ourselves a new set of questions that is about the culture and the context that we're creating for diversity to thrive, or as I think is happening in some places, for diversity to somehow not serve positive purposes inside of our organizations and perhaps to divide us. Now, I think the other thing I would say to you, those of you who are students, is that in some ways when I think about diversity in today's context, it is more pressing and more of a challenge than it was for my generation and the issues that we faced. Because today there's more complexity. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and the world was basically black and white. That's the way I thought about it. When I left Kansas City to go to college, I thought the world was just black and white. And that's the way people talked about things. That's what diversity amounted to. In today's world, that's not the case. It's a much more complex world. It's also fraught with more opportunity and more danger. If we look at some of the conflicts that exist in the world today, they divide along lines that define people's identity. And more, diversity is not simply about categories. In my day, it was a lot about categories, right? People looked at you, they knew what category you were in, they thought they knew everything they needed to know about you. Today, diversity is really about identity. And I can't know your identity unless I have the ability to engage you. And so what we've got to develop is the skill to engage people, to get to know them, to get to know who they are, to understand what's underneath who they are and their identities. And I would end by asking each of you to ask yourselves, how prepared, how committed are you to provide leadership in the context of diversity that exists today and that will define the first half of the 21st century, which is your time? And some things to, mark yourself against as a checklist is, are you able to build relationships across lines of difference? Do you have meaningful relationships with people who are not like you? Have you learned how to cross those boundaries? That's a skill. Doesn't just happen by luck. Are you global in your mindset and your orientation? How many languages can you speak? How many countries have you been to? How well do you understand the rest of the world? Are you committed to removing barriers that inhibit people from contributing to the fullest of their capability and reaping the rewards of that contribution? Are you committed to removing the barriers that inhibit people from fully contributing and reaping the rewards of those contributions? How do you manifest that in your life right now today? And finally, I would ask you to think about how you exercise choice. By that I mean, how do you choose the places, the institutions, and the relationships that you're going to be in? And I would argue that one criteria for your choice should be being in those places and relationships and institutions, whether it's at work, at school, or in the community, that allow you to become more and more your whole self. The key to being powerful, I believe, in the world that we will live in the first half of the 21st century, is that you are able to bring all the relevant parts of who you are to whatever you're doing, such that you become as powerful as you can be in that moment. So if you lock yourself up in corporations where you're going to work thinking about how you hide some part of yourself, right? I mean, I can remember when people wondered whether or not they should put artifacts in their office that would signal to people that they identified as black, even though they were sitting there black, right? Where women wondered if they should put up pictures of their families because it would make people aware of the fact that they were a woman who could have kids, even though they were a woman who had kids, hiding parts of their identity. Being in relationships that don't allow you to bring your full self, right, needs to become a criteria, because to the extent at this age in your life you become aware of what it feels like when you can bring your full self, by the time you're my age, you'll be a powerful engine for change in the world. Okay? So those are my opening comments, and I'll stop there. Do I have time to take questions? Okay, I'll take questions. Did I do okay? Nobody laughed? Everybody looked serious? Thanks for clapping, otherwise they won't invite me back. Questions? Yep.
Good morning. Okay. Good morning. My name is Andrew Hainsworth. I'm a senior at George Washington University. And my question for you is, as we are young millennials, we're supposed to, move from job to job. What would you say would be a good thing to train outside of just the workforce to be more, get that more experience, to be diverse and better yourself, to not have that job loyalty, but to be loyal to yourself and a mission or vision you have for yourself?
I think one is to start by creating a vision for yourself that isn't simply what do I want to be. It's about how do I want to be experienced in the world, right? And how do I want to experience the world? And move toward those things that give you that experience. I'll give you an example, personal example. I started out thinking, as I said, when I was 10 years old, I thought I was going to be a lawyer, right? And by the time I got to college, I started to investigate that, and I realized that I wanted to be a lawyer because I thought lawyers changed the world. So the experience that I wanted to have of myself was always that I was somewhere out there making a difference. And I just moved toward experiences that allowed me to feel like I was making a difference. And that propelled me toward things that then developed me in a way that I was able to give up that marriage to being a lawyer, which made my mother actually cry at my college graduation at Yale, right? And move towards something that was more meaningful, and to go through a series of jobs. And after 22 years at the Harvard Business School, still moving toward that, I made the decision to come here to Georgetown, right? Because I wasn't seeking the package. Right? Being a professor allowed me to feel like I was making a difference in the world. For a quarter, I became a professor in 1986 at the Wharton School and then moved to Harvard. So for 25 years, and I could feel that. And then at some point, I could feel that maybe I could have an even bigger impact. So asking yourself, how do I want to be experienced? And that can come in lots of different packages, and just start moving toward it.
Thank you.
Right here in the... Don't tell me what school you're from if you're not from here.
All right. Good morning. My name is Jordan Culpepper. I'm actually a senior at Homewood Flossmoor High School out of Chicago, Illinois. I'm here with my mom. My question is, I guess a rebellious...
I thought she was an undergraduate.
No. We all have that phase, the teenagers, as a rebellious teenager. So how do you convince a rebellious teenager who's applying to colleges to achieve their whole self? And how do you teach that and their full potential?
How do you teach it? It's a great question. I think that it's more than a matter of teaching it. It's putting young people in environments where they can experience it. And I think it's dialoguing with them about what they're experiencing, right? So I had I'm sorry to be so autobiographical in this, but I've got a 17-year-old who's applying to colleges as we speak, right? And I've never told him, you know, how to be, right? But what we've always tried to do is have him question himself in terms of how he's experiencing himself in the experiences that he's having. And I was reading his college essays, and it's kind of like, you know, you never know as a parent whether or not you're actually succeeding, right? You know, most of the time. I'm reading his college essays, and I saw he's, you know, like, he got it. He got it. And I think it's much more the experiences that he's had, and it's also the conversations that he's been able to have with adults that he trusts and older folks that he trusts, like his older brother and sister. And so trying to figure out how you put people in those experiences. I know I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for mentors, you know, starting with my dad, who didn't tell me how to be, but they pushed me to reflect on how I was being, and whether that was good enough, whether that was an excuse for what I was afraid of, and those things came out.
Can you hear me? Good morning. Thank you so much, for the speech. I connected with a lot of things you mentioned, Dean Thomas. And I guess I just wanted to sort of, by the way, guys, I'm a senior here at Georgetown in the college, government history. So I wanted to ask you, in the context of, essentially, I work, some of my extracurricular activities on campus are around diversity issues. And so I've been thinking about just diversity in general. I wanted to get your comment on this idea of students from minority backgrounds going, and I know this is like a business sort of ish conference, but this idea of students of minority backgrounds having to feel like they need to go into business, possibly to, I don't know, possibly for, I guess, socioeconomic issues growing up. I know I didn't grow up in a very fortunate background, but having the need, so in other words, having our students go into business and sort of stay in business their entire careers versus, for example, I've noticed at Georgetown anyways, that while we do have administrators that are of color, there is a serious lack of faculty that are of color. And I think that's a very important issue to bring up because not enough students of color are actually going into academia, possibly, and it might be a self-reinforcing problem where if you don't see yourself amidst the person that's teaching you, you can't actually see yourself doing it one day at the same as well. So I guess I just wanted to hear your comments on sort of if you have any comments on like that issue in and of itself. And so yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know whether you plan to raise one issue, but in my mind, your comments stimulated a number. On the feeling obligated to move in a certain direction, feeling obligated to go into business versus some other paths, I think that one of the things that comes from not being from a privileged background oftentimes is you're oriented toward being risk averse, right? So I got all this, what I really want to do is go in this direction, but I have all of this debt, I have all these things, people are telling me which way to go. And some of that about pursuing what you're passionate about is about courage. It's about having the courage to go there and trusting that you can always get back to the conservative place. It's also, I think being creative as well, such that if you decide to go into business and what you're also interested in is doing something that's going to help your community, you can do both. You can go into business and then ask yourself, what am I doing with those hours when I'm not at work? There's lots of places out there where you can make a difference. And experiment with where you really want to be and where you can make the most difference. I think I am totally sympathetic and understanding of your observation that we don't have nearly enough faculty of color. And some of that is a pipeline question. That is to say, how many people sitting out here in this room who are undergraduates have the possibility of becoming an academic somewhere on your radar, and having the courage to pursue that, but also being able to see role models who can give you that vision. And today you'll see Michael Eric Dyson, one of the world's premier philosophers and leaders of thought on social issues and public intellectuals. So we do need to put those images there in front of you. It's something that I'm committed to, and I know how difficult it is. Just in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we made an offer to an African-American woman to join our faculty and a Hispanic woman to join our faculty. I thought I had them sealed. Another institution jumped in, offered them each the moon. I didn't get them. I'm mad, but I'm committed, and I'm trying to get my colleagues who are deans committed. Question?
Good morning, Dean Thomas. Hello, everyone. My name is Naquisha Saunders Brantley. I'm a junior at Howard University. And in the field of business, I want to focus on healthy living and healthy eating, because overall, we all come from different cultures and backgrounds, and there's diversity. So my question to you is, what's your opinion or the value should be placed on experiencing different foods from different cultures and bringing people together so we can stay healthy and make sure we accomplish the goals that are at hand, so we can make sure our environment stay diverse and we keep building strong relationships with everyone around the world, not just here in DC in America, but what about, we can go to Paris and we can also go to Norway and we can learn those cultures, but the most important thing is the food, so we can all stay healthy, so we can implement these things.
Well, I can just start with amen. I agree with everything you said, starting with the emphasis on healthy food and healthy living, because I really do believe as well that our physical manifestation is as important to our ability to be powerful leaders in our communities. If you're not healthy, it's hard to sustain the kind of energy that it takes to make the contributions we want to make. Start there. And the observation that food is a way to understand cultures. And I think that's absolutely right. It's also a way to make connections. And it's the one part of our lives that usually is infused with whatever the cultural underpinnings are that define important parts of our identity, right? Because, we all can sort of dress up and go to work and look exactly the same, and I may not know that your culture, because you look like you look, is actually West Indian. And that's different than, right? And I'm thinking you're from Kansas City like me, right? But I actually learned something deeper about your culture when you share your food with me. And that creates a different kind of understanding and connection. Can I take one more question, Dean Grant? One more question. Yep. Lady with the blue shirt on. Good morning.
So in terms of what you said, and being a leader in diversity, I feel like a lot of my life has been devoted to shattering Latino stereotypes, just like what it means, like what you see in your mind when it becomes a Latina, and I feel like it's my duty, but at times it feels like a burden. So in terms of what you think, do you think it's a duty, a burden, a combination of both? Like what do you think about that?
I think that you're going to be better off long term if you relate to it as a choice, not a duty. Because here's what can happen when you relate to it as a duty, right? A duty to break the stereotypes, is that there may be a moment in public when you really want to be your Latino self in a way that might make you vulnerable to the stereotype. But if what I'm saying is, I've got to always be defying the stereotypes, I can find myself cutting myself off from a part of who I am that's actually important to me, or denying myself some enjoyment. And I'll give you a personal example. I grew up in a totally segregated educational community up until I was 17. Then I wound up at Yale as an undergraduate. I'm encountering this world, and I realize that there are stereotypes, right, that people are relating to me on. You know, people are saying things to me, and I can't figure out why they're saying it. And I'm like, oh, it's stereotypes. Okay, gotta defy the stereotypes when I'm around white people. So there was a period in my life where I would not eat watermelon if I was in a room that was predominantly white. This is a true story. I'm just going to be straight up, right? Straight up. I would not eat watermelon in a room if the people in that room were predominantly white. I love watermelon. I love watermelon, right? Hey, there you go. There you go. It's my generation. We know each other well. So I say approach it all as a choice about presenting yourself whole in who you are. And my guess is if you do that, you'll defy lots of stereotypes that actually matter to you. And you won't feel a burden because it's your choice. You're not carrying the people's burden. You're carrying your own obligation and choice, which I say should be to live as your full self. Right? Because I've also been on the other side where I've had black people say to me after they come to my office and they sit down, they say, wow, I'm surprised. Why is that? You're down. I say, oh. Well, why didn't you think I was down before? Oh, well, you know, white people seem to like you. Right? Because now I'm just doing me. Right? So I say, you know, treat it as a choice. And it won't feel like a burden. Okay? Thank you.